What's going on, guys? Deadly Warfare back with another video. Today's going to be a little bit of a different one. Gameplay wise, I'd love to get some of that out for you guys, but it's still not at my new house yet. So we don't have the best Wi-Fi. But today we're going to be going over basically just how to build your rogue. Now I would just like to put this out there. I am by no means the best rogue in Arcane Legends, but I feel like I have definitely played it enough to know how to build the character and what to put on your physical character when you're leveling up, so you don't use any useless skill points towards something that doesn't necessarily matter. Okay. So for starters, what I'd like to get into, what we're going to go over is we're going to go over skill points. We're going to go over what skills to put your stuff into. And I do have two sets that I'll go over. And then I will also go over what you want to do necessarily when you're like a lower level, okay? So like I said, for starters, we're going to go ahead and go into the skills. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to respec so you guys can kind of see like what we're dealing with. You can obviously see that for like my Shadow Pierce, this is my Cursewood setup, or just like this is like my main set that I use, but I made it when I was running Cursewood. But basically, you're just going to get everything down the middle, and then the top, you'll get top right for the additional 5% for their armor reduction. And then you'll also heal yourself, and then you'll also increase the damage. You don't necessarily need to do that. You could also increase the number of attacks performed at the end of Shadow Pierce, which is also a great one. And then just hitting up to 4 enemies. Now, I don't necessarily use Shadow Pierce for targeting multiple enemies anymore. I did do it a lot when my gear wasn't crazy, just because you could Shadow Pierce in through a bunch of enemies and just constantly heal, so you would never die. So at the level that I'm at, I could probably change it and get an extra 10% critical hit chance, or just completely not use it at all necessarily, because obviously with rogues, your critical hit chance once you get to level 86 is already high enough. You're not going to need anything over 100%. And I'll show you this right now. Like with just any regular set, you'd normally be sitting around 90% to 100%. You could obviously see I'm sitting at 118%. Basically saying that I am critting 100% of the times. Every time I hit an enemy, it's going to be a crit no matter what. So that's the nice thing about the rogues. Any other classes, they're not going to be like that. You might have to build towards an actual critical chance build if you want to hit your crits more often. But besides that, we'll go into the aim shot. So aim shot is going to be your best friend when it comes to dealing a massive amount of damage to the bosses. Because obviously, if you guys don't know already, you can increase the damage by 10%, and then you get this one. You can then increase it by basically 250% damage. You'll basically do a range. So depending on what the percent is when you get it shot off, you'll land in between 150 to 250% damage. And then along with your critical hit chance increase by 10 seconds for 5 seconds, or 10% for 5 seconds after using the aim shot. And then aim shot now reduces target's armor by 15%. And then for the skills on the side, you want to go far right, just because you can get leech off of the shots. You can increase your critical damage by 75%. And then you will also buff critical damage by 5% for 5 seconds. And then down here, reduce target's armor by 20%. So you could also do the speed one if you want to, but at the end of the day, target's armor is where it's going to be at, because that's what you're going to use on bosses and stuff like that, okay? For Razor Shield, we just want to focus more towards being able to not get slowed down and stuff like that, and then along with getting your invincibility, okay? So again, your dodge is going to be increased by 20%, and then damage dealt by Razor Shield gives you 25% chance to cause targets to bleed. and then so on and so forth. Increase the duration, and then Razor Shield now removes all stuns, stun-free snares, roots, and slows effect to the caster. So this bottom one is, this bottom one is going to be your main one that you're going to want to use right here. And then along with, if you go to the far right, if you full charge it, you get 3 seconds of invincibility. If you don't full charge it, you get 2 seconds. Now for PvE, it's not necessarily worth to full charge. You don't really need to full charge it. But in PvP, it's definitely a big one to get that extra 1 second of invincibility, especially when warriors will just absolutely walk you with their Juggernaut. Now, for the perks on the other ones, you go far right just to restore some of that mana every couple of seconds. And then you can also give them some bleed. And then on the top one, you get 15% bonus damage to bosses. So while your Razor Shield's activated, you just basically get 15% extra boss damage. So super good with that. Now for the Noxus Bolt, you're going to want to use basically, again, every single one down the middle. And then once you get all those, if you go to the far right top, it says targets by the Noxus Bolt leave poison pools behind. That's just a little bit of extra damage. You don't have to do it. You can. But me personally, I just have it on there. And then Noxus Bolt does an additional poison, but it also gives you 5% boss damage. So when it lays a poison pool on the boss, it'll give you an extra 5% boss damage as well. And then just obviously increasing the critical hit damage by an extra 25%. Okay, so that's going to be the skills that I use personally. And then for the passives, it's just going to be everything except for, this is going to be like my mobbing set. So this isn't even like, I'm not using gold or anything like that. So like I said, there's no gold loot on here. As a lower level, I would recommend putting gold loot on, just so you can get, you know, a little bit extra gold when you're running through the maps and stuff like that. But once you get to a certain point, once you fully get this done, I think it's 5% for max gold loot. It's really not that worth to have 5 skill points in here, especially if you just have a full gold loot set, okay? Don't worry about pickup radius because you don't really care about that. Pet XP, don't really care about that. And then focus loot, you don't need to care about that at all. But everything else you're going to want to get. So increase your armor value, increase your intelligence, increase your critical chance, increase your movement speed, your damage dealt, and then also increase your strength. And then obviously permanently increase your dexterity is a big one. And then get some haste for yourself, okay? Now with all of that, for masteries, I just have a couple extra points into the Shadow Pierce, just so I can get a little bit more extra health when I dash into the enemies. And then for my Razor Shield, it's just going to reduce damage taken. Now, if you don't really care about how much health you get from the Shadow Pierce, I would recommend just dumping all 10 points into the Razor Shield. Okay. Now, again, no ultimates, and then once you obviously do the 20 curses, you get the boss ability. Now, for the attribute points, as you guys can see, I don't have any points into strength, and I don't have any points into intelligence. Now, the reasoning for that is because as a rogue, you're already pretty squishy. There's not really a reason to put more health into your rogue. Unless, I would say, if you were doing like the 20 stack curses or something like that, or just any curse in general stacking, you could obviously adjust your attributes and give yourself a little bit more extra health. But me personally, it's going to be like a glass cannon build. You're basically just going to dump everything into dexterity. You're going to increase your bonus damage, your dodge, your critical hit damage, and then, or your critical hit percent, sorry, and then your actual damage itself. Okay. So that is my main skill loadout that I'll use for it. And then I do have one more here. If you guys don't know this, if you go down to this bottom left corner, it says loadout right here. If you click on it, you can basically save any loadouts you have here. Obviously, if you want to switch back to your old loadout, you do have to use a respec scroll. But respec scrolls are already pretty cheap in the auction anyways. So if you guys do end up making multiple skill sets, you can go here and save them in here, so you don't ever have to like respec and then re-put all your stuff back into it. All right, now another one that I would like to show you, it's going to be pretty much the exact same thing, but when you're farming lower level areas or something for like your mob kills or something like that, I went strictly for max mob kill ability. Okay, so bosses don't really matter because you're already pretty much going to one tap, or at least basically one tap every single boss in a lower level zone. This is just going to go straight for getting all your mana back so you can constantly be recharged, increase the numbers of attacks, and then obviously Shadow Pierce hitting up the 4 enemies. Again, a lot of this stuff isn't going to be focused towards boss damage anymore. It's just going to be more or less mobs, okay? And I'll kind of just leave these on the screen for a second. If you guys do want to end up copying these over, you can go ahead and just pause it and then copy it over and then resume the video. But yeah, no, so passives, again, it's the exact same things. And then masteries, it's going to be just some extra points in the Razor Shield. And then for the ultimates, this is where I actually have an ultimate. You'll use Refuel. It's just basically giving all you and all your allies 100% movement speed and 15% mitigation for 15 seconds. So when you do get your ultimate recharge, you could just pop it and you run at the speed of light, even if you don't have a speed pet or anything like that. I will say that Refuel is really good for events. So if you guys are struggling with events and you can't afford a speed pet, I would say put Refuel on, and it will definitely help you out a lot when it comes to running some of them. And then again, for the attribute points, it's just going to be the exact same, nothing crazy different. Okay. And then the last one that I want to go over, this one was the main. I'll go over these PvP builds in a later video if you guys want to see my PvP loadouts and stuff like that. We'll go ahead and go into that. But my other loadout that I have for this one was like my OG one that I used when I was bossing as a lower level. It definitely, this setup right here, I made, and then it just helped me a lot when it come through, like, especially running Fester Fang or something like that as a low level. I know all of you understand what I'm talking about when I say that. Fester Fang is no joke when you don't have the gear. But these skills will help you out just a little bit more in the areas, and it'll definitely help you kill the boss a little bit quicker. So you're just going to be focusing more towards the healing factor, mana factor, and then, again, you're just going to be doing the amount of damage and stuff like that. Again, I'll leave these on screen for you when you guys want to just pause and then reuse. All right. And then we'll go ahead and go into the passives. Now with the passives, again, like I said, I used this when I first started playing the game. This is like my OG build that I did. And then, again, it has gold loot on there. As a lower level, you know, gold loot's just going to be nicer, like I said, to help you get a little bit more money in the long term. Now for the masteries, you can obviously see it's just going to be the same things. Razor Shield, Shadow Pierce. And then for the ultimates, like I said, this is going to be for your lower level stuff. The ultimate aim shot, super good. Shoots that 3 deadly arrows. And obviously those numbers are going to vary between levels. But in between that damage range, you can see it just, you shoot 3 bullets out. Each can deal as much damage as 2.7, basically 2.7 mil, or as little as 1 mil. Okay, super good. And then for the attribute points, again, like I said, just everything into dexterity. All right, cool. So for pets, if you're a new person starting out and you're trying to do your pets and stuff like that, if you go to, when you're doing your start out, right? And then if you're using your start out pets and stuff like that, For Rogue, you're obviously going to use Precious because she's going to be the dexterity pet that you can use when you start out. So I would grab her. And then obviously later on down the line, once you do end up getting, you know, your late game pets, once you do end up getting your late game pets, you know, any of them will really be fine up until like you're actually trying to boss late game. So as you can see, we got all these pets here. I don't really use a whole lot of them. I just got a lot of them for the pet APS. But again, any of them will be perfectly fine. And then once you do end up getting to level 86, all of these guys that I got favorited, I would recommend trying to get your hands on. Heroic Slice is your gold loot pet. Arcane. Again, Arachne's going to give you 100% gold loot, way better than Julian now. And Arachne's still really cheap, so I would recommend grabbing one. And reasoning for that is because I feel once all the Arachnes have been grabbed and used up, it's going to skyrocket up to whatever the Julian used to be, which was like 100 and something odd mil. Okay, so recommend getting yourself an Arachne and then Prisma as well for an extra 50% gold loot bonus, and then you also get the 25% chance to get your gold loot from the slice. Okay. Obviously, for pets on just your main one, you can obviously see that we're running Arcane Sap. Reasoning for Arcane Sap is because it gives you that 60% chance to increase your damage, stacking by 35% for 10 seconds. Sap is by far the best pet in the game, and I get it, he is not on the cheaper side, but I will say if you have the gold for it and you found somebody that is selling one for the amount of gold, and it's less than... In the market right now, it's probably up to about 100 mil, roughly. But if you could find one for like 80 mil, I would steal it. Heroic Gourd Weaver is pretty cheap right now. I think he's only like 35 to 50 mil, so he definitely shot down in price. I would recommend picking him up for your boss damage because he also gives you 25% crit damage, 30% armor, 30% damage stacking, 30% boss damage, and then he also gives you 20% speed stacking. Now, he isn't a speed pet, but, you know, he's good to have on your speed if you don't have a decent pet with a happiness bonus of speed. Now, for the arcane abilities, I'm going to rattle off a couple of them that are, like, by far the best for late game. Budget build, I've said it a million times. I've probably said it in a good amount of my videos. The best budget build pet you could probably get for an arcane ability is going to be Arcane Vermilius. If you guys aren't familiar with Arcane Vermilius, we will go ahead and pull him up for you. We'll just go to that, and then we'll type in Vermi. So if you guys aren't familiar with the what Arcane Vermilius does for his arcane ability, he'll give you 25% critical hit damage, which is super good. 25% boss damage, and then he'll also give you 25% haste. And haste is there to help cool down your abilities. Okay, haste doesn't help cool down your armors and stuff when all that's procced, but like it increases your hit speed, it increases your ability to spam your abilities quicker, if that makes sense. Okay, so he is probably one of the best. We'll see if there's any in auction. Like I said, he's really cheap right now. You can obviously see 4 mil for the cheapest one. I would say that's a steal. When I first bought Vermilius, he was up to like 30. Okay, so definitely a good pet to get your hands on. And then we'll go back into the stable. If you don't have a good happiness bonus or you can't afford Gourd Weaver, there's also Maplewood. I think it's Maple. No, M-A-P-L-E. Yes, Maplewood. All right, so Maplewood is going to be basically your other budget build friendly pet that you're going to be using for your happiness bonus. It gives you 80 primary stats along with 22 STR dex. I don't know why they don't just consolidate this and say it gives you 100 primary stats because it gives you 80%, or it gives you plus 80 dex, and then it gives you plus 20 STR dex int. I think it should just be like, oh, you get 100 dexterity and then 20% STR and int, or however they want it to go. But it also gives you 25% crit damage, 25% haste, 30% damage stacking. So again, if you were to have Vermilius, you're getting 50% haste, 50% crit damage, and then also you're getting about, I think he does 30. I wasn't paying attention, but you get the gist of how much extra damage you're going to be doing. But if you just have Maplewood and Vermilius on any, and I mean any of these pets, it don't got to be heroic, it don't got to be arcane, but if you have Maplewood and Vermilius on any of these guys, you will still be set up for life when it comes to doing your damage. Okay, now let's say you're not into the bossing portion, but you just want to kill mobs super fast. A good pet for you, if we just go to this, Heroic Moonshade for a happiness bonus. If you go ahead and look at it, it just states you get 25% critical hit damage, 30% haste, and then 20% damage stacking. But you also get plus 20 armor stacking, 30% damage stacking, and then you also get 30% non-boss damage. So that's just going to give you basically an extra 60% damage to any non-boss enemy. So it's super good. It works on mini bosses and it works on mobs. But again, if you're looking more towards, killing a boss quicker, I'd recommend trying to get your hands on a Gourd Weaver. Okay. Now, like I said, with Siege Part, obviously everybody knows he's literally the best pet in the game right now for arcane abilities. Just because he'll stun any enemy for 3 seconds, stuns up to 10 enemies for 3 seconds, and then it gives the target will also take a 50% increase in damage, and then they also do 50% less damage for 8 seconds. So not only are you doing 50% more damage to any mob that it gets affected by, but they're also doing 50% less damage to you, so you're like a walking tank, okay? Now, he is super good for mobbing, and he is also super good for bossing. I've by far had my best, like, leaderboard run times and stuff like that with Siege Part and Gourd Weaver on my side, along with Arcane Sap, okay? Now, we'll go ahead and step away from the pets and the skills, and let's go ahead and get into gear. Now, I'm not necessarily going to go over any gear that's going to be for lower levels. This is going to be strictly for you guys that are level 81 and up, okay? So, for starters, I know I don't have it on me, but what you're going to want to do is try to get your hand... Once you're level 81, if you don't have it or already do, good on you. But if you don't already have it, you're going to need to get your hands on a Kraken bow, Kraken daggers, and you're also going to need to get your hands on a Kraken chestplate and a Kraken belt. Okay? Those are the 4 main items that you need for Kraken set in order to, just basically walk through any areas. Now, you will need decent awakes. If you don't have full Kraken, you will need decent awakes on these 4 items in order to basically walk through any maps. But if you do have the full Kraken will carry you all the way to level 86. Okay? Now, once you hit level 86, there's going to be a couple things you need to get your hands on. I do recommend getting your hands on an SB set. Reasoning for getting your hands on an SB set is because it is quite literally one of the best mythic sets in the game, and it has some of the best procs you could get off of a set. Okay? Now, if you guys don't know what I'm talking about or aren't familiar with SB at all, if you have 6 out of 6 SB, you could do the Cosmic Killer buff, which gives you 200% damage stacking in PvE, and then it also gives you 60% damage reduction. and that's for 7 seconds. So for 7 seconds, you're basically just literally a glass cannon. I wouldn't say a glass cannon because you get the damage reduction, but you're just like a cannon as a rogue, okay? So it's super good. And for stats that I would say focus more towards, for any SB item, I'd recommend trying to get a percentage-based awake on it, a speed awake, and then also try to shoot for boss damage as well. Now, Star Beast is normally used as a proc set nowadays, so you don't necessarily need any, even if you just had straight speed awakes on it, it's pretty good. But if you're going to be going into PvP and doing like an SB only PvP set, you will need percentage-based awakes on it, and speed awakes. But for just mobbing and stuff, it's not really you're not really going to be using SB like a main set unless you physically cannot get blood gear or anything like that. But if you can't get blood gear, get the full SB set. I would say just get the Star Beast daggers. It's not worth getting the bow or the chakrams in a sense. But you can get them. It's just their procs aren't that good. 9 times out of 10, you're probably just going to full charge the Star Beast daggers anyways. Okay. But yeah, just get a full SB set because it's super cheap right now. You could get an entire SB set for under 100 mil right now. So it's really not as bad as you think it would be. Now, for proc sets, for the next proc set, I'm going to go over, once you do end up getting all your guys's, sets done and you get your money done and everything like that, I would recommend trying to get, I would say first thing you need to get is going to be, I'll go ahead and go over it. You need to get the helmet, the armor, and the arty. Okay, so these 3 things will set you up for your blood 3 out of 3 easily. Now, I get it, blood arty is a little expensive, so if you can't afford the blood arty at the time, even if you do just get like a blood belt or a blood ring or a blood bracelet, that'll still get you your 3 out of 3 set. Okay, but once you get your full blood, I would recommend using the ascended, or not the ascended, even just the regular blood daggers. They will be super good for killing any type of mobs, and it'll also be super good for killing any bosses. Like I said, a full blood set that is focused towards boss damage and elite damage, along with Bloodstar daggers and a siege part. When you proc that on the boss, you get your Cosmic Killer, swap to this set, full charge of this, you're going to kill it in you're going to kill Leaderboard Hydra in like 10 seconds. Okay? I know it's not the best speed that a rogue's ever done before, but it is by far, way better than not being able to kill it in one proc. Okay, so the last set that I will go over with you guys is going to be your damage set. So there's been a lot of misinformation when it comes to a damage set, and everybody just thinks that it needs to be this, okay? Everybody thinks that it needs to be Bloodstar Chakrams, Blood Helmet, Blood Chestplate, Blood Arty, SB, and then Immortal Crypt Bracelet, right? So I would say your damage set, it just needs to be the items that gives you the most damage and dexterity possible. Okay. Now with a damage set, obviously since I'm late game and have the gear, I have all the main stuff for a damage set that needs to, makes it essential for one, right? But if you cannot afford an item out of these things, that is totally fine. Okay, I've said it to numerous people before. Blood arties are expensive. We get it, right? I'm not controlling the market. It's everybody else that gets them in the crates, and they put it in the auction for super expensive, and it just makes it to where, free-to-play players can't get their hands on it. I get it. It sucks. I don't really think it's fair, but, that's the state that we're in right now. So if you can't afford the blood arty, even just putting a blood ring on and then putting a SB arty on, you would still get 3 out of 3 SB, and then you would also be getting 3 out of 3 blood already, right? Because the weapon itself counts towards the 3 out of 3 bonus. So even if you didn't have the blood ring and you just had these 3 items, you could do blood, SB, 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 SB. And then if you have the immortal bracelet, cool, use the immortal bracelet. But if not, use SB. It's not going to be something that, you know, is built overnight. A damage set always has room for improvement, right? Right now I'm sitting at 5,130 dex, okay? My damage set still isn't even the strongest damage set in the game. I might be up there, but I'm not the strongest, which is why I'm still continuously improving my set. And that's all that really matters, right? So those 3 main sets you will need to get done. But again, at the end of the day, if you can't afford, you know, certain items with blood, even if it's just because I know in the market right now, blood bracelets, blood belts, and blood rings, they're like 25 to 35 mil max for clean ones. You can use these 3 items here and still get your 3 out of 3 blood. But at the end of the day, what you're going to want to look at is look at items and see if they have these big descriptions right here, because you can see that the Star Beast amulet gives you a ton of stuff. So there are some items that you don't want to swap out for, you know, a different piece, just because of the physical bonuses that they have. So I really hope that this was informational for you guys. I have gotten a lot of comments stating that I needed to test out damage sets without the blood arty. I'm trying to do that, but currently, since I don't have good internet, every time I try to record and go fight some enemies to show you guys, it just lags me out of the game. I will hopefully get a video like that up in about a week or so. But yeah, hopefully this is informational for you. If you guys do have any questions, feel free to put them into the comments. I would love to get back to you guys. I always love seeing your guys' comments and responding back to you guys. But yeah, if you know you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. And if you guys are new to the channel, feel free to subscribe. It does take a couple seconds, and if you guys don't always want to stay subscribed, you can always unsubscribe. But yeah, I appreciate it, guys, and y'all have a good day.